right, guys, welcome to another daily dose of the Word. We are back in the book of John after looking at Proverbs 3 earlier this week, and we will be continuing on in chapter 6, as you can see, with the famous story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. So we're only going to look at verses 1 through 15 here. We'll stop here, and then Jesus walks on the water we'll look at next time. But verses 1 through 15 is a really good story about Jesus feeding the 5,000. I think there's a lot we can take away from it. So let us dive right in. Starting here in verse 1. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that the people may eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was so much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish as much as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." Perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. So we are not going to look at everything that I marked up here today, but we are going to talk about a few things that I think are readily applicable to our lives and teach us a little bit about Jesus. The first one, well, number one, I think it is interesting to see in the purple here, you see the amount of times that it's mentioned that there's just so many people following Jesus. It's clear that he is having an impact in this time by the large crowds that are following him. And so we can just see the impact that Jesus is already having. But the first thing I want us to look at is here in the red, right? I like how the phrasing, when Jesus asked them, "Where are we to buy bread?" it says right after that, he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. So Jesus already knows what his plan is. And then we see the response of 2 different disciples. Right here in verse 7, we see Philip respond by saying, 200 denarii would not be enough, right? So Philip's focus is on money. Okay, we don't have enough money in order to provide for these people. And then you continue on to verse 8. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" And so Philip's first response is, okay, we don't have enough money to feed these people. Andrew's response is, okay, we have food, but we don't have enough food to feed these people. And it's funny, you would think that the disciples would at some point learn who they are walking with, right? Who they are walking with, right? Verse 11. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish as much as they wanted. So the first thing I want us to think about and take away is we are to trust Jesus to provide enough for us, not our money in our possessions. Now, our money in our possessions we receive from Jesus, but when talking about being able to provide for ourselves, our first look must always be towards the Lord. Now, he's going to use stuff on this earth to help provide for us, right? It's not to say like we look towards God and we neglect money or possessions or food or whatever it may be, but it is to say that our first look must be towards Jesus, to trust him to provide the answer, not the things of this world. So what ways are you guys trusting in yourselves on a daily basis, and how can you direct your eyes more towards Jesus? The second thing we see is, as I noted down here in the blue, is that Jesus will always give us as much as we need, if not more. As much as we need, if not more. So you see here at the end of verse 11 and verse 12, it says, "So also the fish, as much as they wanted." So they got as much as they wanted, and when they had eaten their fill, right? So it's clear that Jesus, from what he had, provides them plenty enough to be able to eat and sustain them. And so it's the same thing for Jesus, right? He gives us plenty enough to sustain us. We need not look further than Jesus in what he gives us to know that we are provided for. It's our selfish nature, it's our selfish desires that want more than what he has presently given us. And I'm telling you that we need to rest and be content with what he's given us right now and trust that he will continue to provide for us in the future as he sees fit. I'm not saying it's easy, it's certainly not. I know that's an area that I'm certainly struggling in right now, but hopefully it's an encouragement for you all to know that we can trust the Lord to provide for us as we need. The last thing I wanted to show you, last thing, we're not going to look at this fourth one because that kind of goes into the next section, but the last one is point 3, which says, Jesus recognizes the importance of not wasting and caring for what we have. All right, so the last thing we see, if we look at the end of this verse, all right, it says, and when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments. This can be so easy for us to forget and neglect. The reality that we have so many possessions, it's so easy for us to just quickly throw stuff away. And I think especially as it relates to food. So this can be a humbling thing for us to look at. It's clear that Jesus made sure that he wanted none of the food that was provided to be left over. Now, if Jesus wanted to provide exactly the right amount, he could have literally provided it so there would be no leftovers and that everyone eating their fill. But there are leftovers, and I think he leaves that in order to, one, provide for people for the days to come, but also to emphasize the point that we are not to waste the things that we are given by God. Jesus gave this food, and he expects it not to be wasted. He expects it to be put to good use. So in what ways in our daily life are we wasting the things that God has given us? I encourage you to think about that, and perhaps maybe even as you're eating your lunch or your dinner today, you make sure you eat it all instead of wasting the things that you have. Anyways, I hope that's all a good reminder for you all today. Think about some of those points, take them into consideration. Hopefully that encourages you in your walk with the Lord. And I continue to look forward to hearing about all that God is doing in your guys' life during this time. All right. Hope you guys all have a good one. Happy Thursday. Talk to you later. Bye.